welcome to OverBoost, a podcast interview series featuring discussions with speedrunners about their history in speedrunning and the runs they're passionate about. I'm your host, PMC Trilogy, and with me today is Makebake. Makebake, how are you?
I'm doing pretty good. How are you?
I'm hanging in there. We're halfway through 2020, right? It feels like halfway through the year. I always like to start off the pod with just some current events stuff, and I feel like a big thing for you recently, you got into doing GTA 4 Most Wanted category, which is where you just do all of the vigilante missions. If you know, listener, if you're someone who only played like Vice City or San Andreas, you may remember the vigilante missions. And in GTA 4, there's a version of that where you steal a cop car and look up a criminal and go attack them. How has that been? Like, are you happy you did it? Because I know it was in the context of a tournament ran by the community. What are your thoughts about that experiment?
I mean, yeah, definitely the tournament is what got me into it, and yeah, I've been enjoying it quite a bit. Like, people ask you a lot, like, if a certain speedrun is actually fun, and I always like say mostly the same thing, that doing Most Wanted is pretty fun. It's just really unfair. Or it's great fun until it isn't. Yeah, no,
I hear that. It definitely, that's the sort of speedrun because, since part of the run you're just under a constant state of 6 stars. It's a little alarming to say the least. Do you feel like you're still going to be looking for a new PB in that, or do you think you're kind of reached the end of your time with that? Because the tournament's over at this point, right?
Yeah, exactly. I made it out of the group stage. I made it to the quarterfinals, I think it was, against Kyle, but sadly he made short work of me. But I had a great time there.
Kyle does it pretty good at GTA 4, as it turns out. Something he's a bit of an expert in. All right, well, let's go back to the start, to where things begin. How do you get into video gaming? Is it family, friends? What brings you into this hobby, broadly?
Ooh, that is a good question. Yeah, I guess just hanging out with computers in the first place, I think, started when I think my mom just got an old computer from her job that they didn't really need or use anymore, and instead of taking it to the dump, you just give it to one of your employees,
sure.
Right? So it just ended up on the desk in our house, and I just started screwing around with it. And of course, because everything was in English, which I was a child, I did not speak English. Mm-hmm. I just started clicking things, and eventually the computer just stopped working.
Do you remember what kind of computer it was? I'm curious, like what era of computing this would have been. I don't know if you know that.
I mean, it was probably the year 2000, maybe 2001. So I genuinely, I don't know, just a big beige box.
Right, as it would have been. So yeah, probably, for all we know, probably like a mid-90s Windows machine that had seen better days, I can only assume.
Oh yeah, for sure. And I mean, yeah, from there on, I got a few floppy disks. Again, no idea what the origin of them was, but Battle Chess, I feel like most people have at least heard of that at some point. Have you heard of Battle Chess?
I don't think so. Is that like how much is it just chess with funny figures, or is there more to it?
I think it's Battle Chess. I might be actually saying that wrong, but I think it was Battle Chess anyway. But it's like, actual knights and a king and a queen and everything. It's just very, crude 90s 2D animation. But when, a pawn hits another, there's actually like a bit of a tussle between the two.
Right. So you get animation, but it doesn't really diverge from how chess is played.
Oh, no.
Yeah.
No, exactly. Gameplay-wise, it's simply chess.
Mm-hmm.
And then I got another floppy disk, which was... I genuinely do not remember the name. I've looked all over the house to see if it was still here somewhere. We still have Battle Chess, but I have no idea what ended up with the other game. And it was just some very old. I think it was like Lamborghini something, and it was just like driving through like a big open world. And honestly, like maybe there were a bunch of mechanics that have just entirely slipped my mind, but from what I remember from it, it was literally just crude like semi 3D like you'd see in Doom and such. And it was just driving in like a bit of an open world with, I think there was traffic as well. So I guess for its time, it was probably pretty up there. But yeah, so those two games was the first things the first video games that I ever came into contact with, and I spent a lot of time with them.
So those are sort of, I guess, maybe the foundation. What's like the first thing that was your own? Were you, because you're talking about something was around the house and you played with it, because of course you played with it. You're a kid. That's what you do. But at what point do you really take it and make it your own? Was there like a first console or your first own, Windows XP machine or?
Oh yeah, for sure. No, yeah. I think it was pretty close to release that my mom and dad bought me an Xbox. And that was my first proper console or first proper thing that I owned, and it came with the combo disc that I think a lot of people are familiar with Sega GT 2002 and Jet Set Radio Future, which I think you've heard me bang on about that game a few times.
Oh yeah, people love that game, but I know you are among those. Yeah, for sure. Interesting. So okay, so. One question I guess I sort of have from there then is, so do you feel like you kept pretty constant with games at that level up until the point where you start speedrunning, or are there any breaks in there? Like, has gaming always been a part there, or have you taken any steps away from it before you got into speedrunning?
Oh no, gaming's always been pretty big thing in my life, because trying to like draw the timeline, I guess. Yeah, it started with the Xbox. I got a number of games. Eventually, I did start shifting more over to PC when my mum struck an amazing deal at Aldi for a nice Medion tower, which could actually play some games. A nice old GT 440 in there.
Aldi, like the grocery store.
Yeah. Every once in a while, they just had some like pretty good deal on Medion PCs. I think Medion is a German company. I'm not entirely sure, but something European.
Sure.
Are you familiar with Medion?
No, I don't think I've heard that one before. But I mean, I feel like when it came to computer OEMs, those kinds of businesses, those tended to be, I feel like, very. Either like nationally or regionally oriented. That's especially in like the 90s and the 2000s. I think at this point you see less of it because mobile devices are much more the thing. But certainly,
oh yeah, for sure.
Certainly PC OEMs, prepackaged PCs. I mean, you had the big ones in America. Maybe elsewhere like Dell, HP, that kind of thing. But
yeah.
But no, I hear that. That's definitely your first own computer is definitely a big step too. All right, so we're going forward in time. What is your first exposure to speedrunning then? Like, when do you become aware of it?
That's a good question, because like I feel like I've always kind of known about the big events like GDQ and everything, but I can't really like properly pinpoint the first time that I heard about events like that. But yeah, the first time I properly, like, personally came into contact with speedrunning, that was definitely checking out KZFru's stream.
And when would that have been?
I mean, probably for about as long as I've been subscribed to his Twitch channel.
Yeah, I was gonna say you might know the amount on that. Yeah, no, I definitely. No, I think it's just interesting to sort of when I've talked to people, I feel like depending on like when you got into speedrunning. Your interest in that, or your sort of the social aspect of it, tends to become very tied to a particular platform depending on when you did it. So for some of the people that I've talked to, it can go back to SDA in the late 2000s, or even some people streaming on Justin TV. If it was like 2010 and 2015 might be Speedrun's live stuff, but certainly I think I know I mean you and I are probably alike in that really once speedrunning became broadly present on Twitch, that's really sort of the platform itself that most carried speedrunning. So I think you and I might be alike in that. So knowing that you're conscious of speedrunning, you're a big fan of the excellent KZ Frew. What pushes you to do a speedrun yourself?
Yeah, good question. Because sorry if I start every single answer with "good question."
No, that's fair. I mean, I like compliments. I'll take them.
I was watching KZ Frew for quite a while. He was most actively into San Andreas at the time, which also is a game that I would love to somehow be able to pull a stat out of life itself to see how many hours I played of that game, because it's probably close to 5,000 or something. But I was very much grabbed by all of that, and I was like, okay, so if I were to do this, if I were to start speedrunning at some point, what could I really do? And of course, San Andreas was a very, very easy thing to think of immediately, but also quite intimidating, as the whole AJS thing wasn't around at the time. So yeah, like 4 hours and 30 minutes. It sounds a bit much.
Right. I mean, at the point you would have been looking at it, there were still dupes and stuff already in the route, right?
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah.
That stuff can really, really kill you. I feel like that's almost the most intimidating stuff, is the current, the no, putting aside the arbitrary jump in script, that you still have the idea of playing a game for several hours, and then, whoops, you messed up the dupe, and, there goes the whole run.
Oh yeah, for sure. Like, I watched KZ tumble into, what was it? Tumble into the sea with Caesar on the back of his PCJ, right? Just
right. How many times
in the middle of a duped mission, just fall into the sea, and there it goes. Well, it's over.
That bridge crossing, that cursed bridge crossing.
Yeah.
So you're talking about, I mean, speedrunning San Andreas, like, that's a pretty uphill endeavor. But like, do you think that experience of, like, was that the one that you really sunk your teeth into? Like, I guess I would put it this way. At this point, looking at your speedrun.com profile, you've done, I would say, over a dozen games or something, like, around that amount. And you've done a variety of games. I think it's also worth saying too, right? It's not just like San Andreas, Vice City, but you've done some cute indie games and things like that. Maybe a better question, now that we've sort of established the timeline of when you got into it and sticking with it, is, do you feel like, this may be a harder question, do you feel like you have a mission statement as a speedrunner? Do you see yourself as someone who's a glitch finder? You're dedicated to a particular genre or particular thing of play? Because I feel like, looking at your list of games, I can't come away with that. So I'm really curious to see if you feel like you have a sort of reason to be when it comes to speedrunning.
Yeah, I suppose, very boring answer, but I suppose it's kind of different per game. It's because, of course, a more recent game like RoboCop that I pretty much just pulled out of a big pile, and no one had done it before, and I kind of started it. I don't know. I guess it. To be brutally honest, I'm just not very good at strat finding and those things. So like I set up the foundation and everything, but like actual proper glitch tech and something and things like that, I guess you're not really gonna get that out of me. So I guess that's one thing we can cross off. That's not really something that I'm great at, but all in all, I just try to do lots of different things, honestly.
So you feel like, I mean, honestly, it sounds to me like what you're really looking for, more so than necessarily sitting down and finding ways to break a game, is to just have sort of a variety of games that you enjoy playing over and over again.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, like a big driving force as well behind looking for new speed games, or a reason to move on from one game and to really go and find another one, is also, marathons, because I really enjoy going to ESA. I enjoy a number of online marathons. So if I feel that I've kind of done everything in my portfolio, that's definitely also a very big encourager to, find something different.
So you just mentioned, actually, I was going to segue into this, and you did it for me. I feel like you've become pretty involved with a few marathons. Certainly, ESA is one of them. I know recently you've also become staff for the online marathon license-a-thon. What led you to get involved with those? And like, do you consider that? Because I know with some sorts of fandom, you know, like for example, like anime conventions or something like along that line, a lot of people will really, really orient their participation in that activity around that opportunity to, you know, meet up with other people and have fun, which is a great thing. It's a kind of a bittersweet thing to be talking about in the year of our Lord 2020. But do you really feel like that is pretty central? Like, I mean, the marathon experience to your participation in speedrunning?
Yeah, I would say so. It's definitely, well, yeah, it plays a big part in it for sure. Because the first time that I went to ESA, which was summer 18, I believe? I think so, summer 18. I went pretty much alone. Like, I didn't really have any big points of contact at the event or anything like that. So the only real thing I had, you know, like on the list to do there was meet up with another runner, Rydog. So beyond that, I was I was pretty much alone there. So well, because people are very friendly at events like this, I met a lot of people. But it also came up really quickly that, wow, a lot of these people that like I'm hanging out with and that I'm slowly becoming friends with are, you know, doing their part at the event itself, like helping around. And maybe a little bit on the selfish side, that there are moments where I'm like, oh, everyone's like, quote unquote, working at the event, right? Like, it's not really work, but you get what I mean. Working at the event, and I can't participate in that because, you know, I'm not a volunteer. I'm very new here still. So that was honestly also a driving force to be like, oh, well, I mean, if all my friends are doing it, why don't I join in as well, and we can do it together.
No, I think that's a good spirit too, because any sort of activity like this, I think with these sort of volunteer run conventions, I know some of these organizations do have staff, but even organizations that do have staff, like I can think off the top of my head, you know, GDQ or MagFest, you know, it still requires a lot of love to make it go, and I think that's an important thing going forward. But let's get some questions with some less love here. I want some takes. All right. I want some hot takes. I'm going to give you the easy one first. Of all the games that you have completed a speedrun of, what is your favorite? What's your favorite run?
God, excuse me as I slowly hop over to my own speedrun.com page.
No, it's fine. Don't worry.
But yeah, no, I'm sure you understand that is just a difficult question, because there's things I love now and there's things I loved 4 months ago, right?
Oh no, it changes with time. Absolutely. I'm certainly convinced when I do some of these, when I ask this question, that I will, if I had asked at a different point in time, I would have gotten a different answer.
For sure, yeah. I mean, I can very clearly, very strongly remember that I mean, it's probably on recording here and there, that I've said multiple times that Preflight Panic was my favorite speedrun of all time. But if I have to like look at my whole list objectively right now, I think that honestly Brütal Legend still takes it. Mm-hmm. It's just, I've spent so much time with that game, and I mean, I genuinely absolutely love that game. That yeah, I think it has to be Brütal Legend.
No, that's extremely fair. That was my guess. If I guess when I write these questions and prepare, I'm like, you know what? I think Make is going to say Brütal Legend. What I don't know is, what is your least favorite run that you have done?
Ooh, okay. I mean, okay. There's one answer that's a little bit maybe unfair. Let's say that. Just looking at my history, at the things that I've submitted, I have to say that Jet Set Radio Future is not a speedrun that I enjoyed.
That's fair.
But
no, that's extremely fair.
That comes with the caveat that I never really took it seriously. I just tried to do some quick playthroughs with some knowledge with a timer going. I wouldn't say that's I would kind of disqualify that from the question.
Mm-hmm.
I just want it out there that yeah, if I were to count it, that would be the answer.
Yeah, I mean, to be clear, the question is not like what game do you hate overall, or like what community do you want to put on blast. That is not the question. The question is what run are you just not into, and that is very, very fair. All right, let's segue over into some more in-depth talk about some of these runs. And I think we'll go, because I feel like when I first came to know you, I definitely associated you with the game Brütal Legend, which you've already mentioned is your favorite run overall at this point in time. How did you first, so is a Brütal Legend a game that you first really came to know casually and only later came back once you developed an interest in speedrunning, or is it a game that you started out on speedrunning?
No, absolutely. That was absolutely a game that I played casually before, because I don't know if I got it like right on release or anything, but when it released, it was a console exclusive for the Xbox 360 and PS3, and as a 360 owner, I played it on that platform, and I put a lot of time into that. I don't think I ever really engaged with the multiplayer at all, but I definitely sat down and 100%ed the game probably 3 times. I would guess 3 times, and yeah, I just sucked every bit of gameplay out of it until there was absolutely nothing left to do. Did it again until I genuinely until it did actually get old. But I spent a lot of time with that game on the Xbox. Then finally it was re-released on Steam. Bought it, probably 100%ed it another 2 times, because I don't know, that game really spoke to me for a long time. And like we started with today, it was the first game that I ever actually ended up speedrunning, because that was the thing. What if I were to speedrun something, what would I do? And I just started with I guess I started with my top 3 favorite games of all time, which was Jet Set Radio Future, and I didn't want to do a run on the Xbox because that was a big hassle. Next up was either, because ranking things is so hard, man.
Ranking things is hard, it's true.
It was either Brütal Legend or Fallout 3. And I think I saw some things or heard some things about Fallout 3 about it being very... the game was never exactly very stable, was it? Without third-party patching and all such. So that was something that scared me a little bit too much, so I looked up on speedrun.com, Brütal Legend, what is the speedrun? Oh, there is one. There are actually some strats. And I looked at the world record and I was like, oh wait, he's not doing this certain strategy that I know about that would be faster here. And then I started laughing to myself and immediately reinstalled the game and started looking in. Of course, I very quickly realized that the thing that I thought would be faster was actually a terrible idea. But still, I did eventually get quite serious about it.
It's the old speedrun viewer question. Hey, streamer, why are you doing that? Because it's fast. But I was going to ask next if this was a thing where, what's the timeline? Because it sounds like someone was already running it before you came along and got into running it. Are there things that if you were to brag about, besides getting top times in Brütal Legend, is there anything that you would brag about introducing to the route or the run?
Things that I introduced to the route or the run. Let's
Or also, if there's just strategies, period, that you're like, this is my favorite. I'm Commander Shepard, and this is my favorite speedrun strategy in Brütal Legend.
No, exactly. There, because of course, Brütal Legend doesn't have any big glitches or anything. But I definitely came up with a few, maybe not exactly strategies, but little variations of my own. Of there's a big a big open field battle, and you know how you position yourself or your troops, or what troops you buy in the first place. Like there's some variation there, and you know one thing's faster than the other thing. So there's definitely some variations that I personally came up with that turned out to actually be pretty quick. And yeah, it's hard to describe because again, there's no name for like specific strats or anything, but it's just like I got my own way to do, for instance, the Battle for Bladehenge. I did it a little bit differently than my opponent at the time, Simple Unit, and I'm sure he would argue with me over what is truly better and what is truly. I mean, he loves to argue. Let's say that.
Sure.
Let's throw some stones. Yeah. But exactly. No, I definitely had some ideas of my own. I also once or twice. Because you buy your own upgrades at 2 different points in the run. You know, you upgrade your weapon, your car, and your some attacks. And I think at one point I just misclicked something and I bought the wrong thing, and then thought like, I mean that is actually not too bad. Like I accidentally bought an engine upgrade for the car. So I mean, car drives faster. Fast things are usually good in speedruns, aren't they? And yeah, I think in my current personal best, cough cough, world record, I'm pretty sure I do actually deviate from the original like let's say the things that we were originally supposed to buy as upgrades.
Yeah, and I think in prepping for this, I think I studied the 12109 video, which, you know, in classic like 7th generation video game form, has a YouTube commenter asking about a multiplayer only achievement, which is my favorite genre of comments on 7th generation video games. One thing I wanted to ask you, and this is sort of a side point, but it's something that I've always been sort of cranky about in terms of giving people sass. What in God's name is going on with your split layout when you play this game? Because it looks to me like you have the live split into like 2 separate sub windows, like distant from each other, and then one of them appears to be splits, and then the other one is like sub splits and the total timer. Is that right? Am I reading that right? It's always been so weird to me to look at, and like, is that right? And also, what led you to do it that way? Okay,
I'm just gonna take 1 second to actually look at it.
I want you to understand this. Like, why did you do this? Because I would look at it and I'll be like, well, those are big segments. It looks like, and these are sub splits. But why are they separate? And why is the timer away from the large segments? And it was very concerning. And I am the live split police. I'm here to arrest you.
Oh God. All right. Well, first of all, I think even till this day, you can notice about a lot of my stream layout, my overlay, as it is. There's a lot of. I mean, some would say there's inspiration from Brütal Legend.
Sure.
Some would say there's straight up thievery from Brütal Legend. But yeah, no. What inspired me to do that bit of layout, first of all, the 2 separate blocks, is that during the tutorial for commanding your troops, it shows a little window with like differently positioned hands. Like there's the classic, metal like fist, throwing up the horns and all that.
Yeah.
And I basically I looked at that box, and I think at the time my splits were covering it up. And I was like, that's kind of a shame, because like it's, I'm covering up a bit of UI, right? It's not exactly essential information to people who are watching the speedrun, but it's just kind of a shame that I'm covering up a bit of the game. So I was like, why don't I just take that box and, make my own a little bit like higher or lower than that, and put my splits in it. So it almost just sinks away into the UI of the game. It's like my splits are part of the game in a way. And then that was a very very nice idea at first. And then I was like, oh, you know, I don't know if it was always a thing, but you know, people started really popularizing subsplits in live splits. So it's like, you know, if this big section, this is like this chapter of the game, and then that it in itself is just divvied up into subsplits. And I think I did the classic thing for a while where like you have the header and then everything below that, and then like if you finish the chapter, it closes up and it goes to the next one.
Right.
And I was like, well, things are like moving around a lot and changing a lot, and I don't really like that. And I wanted something that was just a bit more static. And then, yeah, I came up with this, which, you know, everyone has their own opinions. Let's say that.
I've never seen anyone else do this. Like, if you had asked me, I wouldn't know that was an option in the live split layout to do that.
Yeah, no, because these are two separate splits, like separate instances of like the splits component. Because yeah, one is just headers, and the other one is just the all subsplits of the current segment. Is that, am I using the right terminology there? I think I am.
Maybe. I'm not going to quiz you. I'm not. Don't worry. This is not. There's not an exam at the end of this podcast.
Oh, thank God.
So, all right. So you've answered that question, and I feel a little better now. I feel more relieved, especially as I mentioned before. And usually for prepping for these interviews, I like to look at a few runs, and certainly that 121.9. That was also funny because you do have chat on screen, and I was in that run for a substantial portion of it apparently.
Oh my!
so that was fun. I was like, oh, it's me, past PMC. How interesting. Do you have any future plans for Brütal Legend right now? I know you currently have... I looked at the categories, and the categories are a little weird. You have the top time in any percent. You have the top time in 100% without concept art. And then you're second if you include concept art. That seems like there might have been a schism about concept art in the community. I don't know if I'm bringing up a sore point here. But do you feel like you have any plans on improving any of those times, or going back for that concept art, which I'm sure is a joy to collect? Or
yeah, it's Brütal Legend 100% has been on my list in, you know, big air quotes for a long time, and you know, every once in a while there is the odd person that asks about it, but yeah, it's not exactly at the top of the list, let's say that, but it's definitely still something that I want to sink my teeth in at some point, because yeah, when I started running 100%, like there was actually a little bit of research that like had to be done at the time, because me and good lord, what was his name? Because he's still on the board somewhere. Runekurt, the second place on 100% without concept art. Me and him did have a little sit down about how we were going to do that, because both of us tried to just, you know, get notes together to do a 100% run, and ended up with like 95% or something. And you know, that was very confusing what was missing, and it ended up we ended up realizing that concept art is a bit of an issue within the game. I don't know if we have time to go into detail on that, but
well, if it is an issue of you know, community disagreement, I'm not. I mean, as much as I love sourcing out drama on a podcast to get people to listen to it, you know, if you feel like it would be relevant to speedrunners listening to give an example of discussion of a category, I would say go into it. But if you feel it's just like the other people are bad and I don't like them, then maybe not. I'll leave it up to you.
Oh no, that's not exactly what I mean. It was more that there's just some issues within the game that it doesn't really tell you how to unlock all of the concept art, and if you go back in the main menu and, hit new game and it says, oh, are you sure your save file will be wiped and all that, it won't actually wipe all the concept art that you collected, so you won't be reset to 0%. So on some level, yes, there is still some disagreement about what 100% truly is. Mm-hmm. Just like, as an example, you can see in some parts of the GTA community, you have 100% and true 100%.
Right.
So that's something that on some level is still being discussed. Not actively, but yeah, there's still maybe some discussion to be had there. But it was just at the time, we didn't really know how to deal with the whole concept art situation. So we just, at the time, with us not really knowing all the ins and outs, made a separate category to do 100% without concept art. And I think at some point I have spoken out about the fact that that category shouldn't exist at this point. But yeah, exactly.
Concept artless 100% or 100%?
Concept artless 100%, okay. Because exactly we know now what the issues are regarding concept art. So everyone can collect the concept art. It just, to the best of my memories, it adds about 45 minutes of extremely boring grind.
Awesome.
But hey, that can be part of 100%.
Yeah.
Not doing literally every single thing that the game asks of you. Usually there are some things in there that are just not the best.
Right. No, for sure. All right. Well, let's move on to other endeavors. Now, there's two other games that I studied before going on here. Which would you rather talk about first? Because I'm not sure. Usually, I try to put these things in a chronological order, but I'm not sure which of RoboCop or Preflight Panic is next. Do you have a preference?
I would say let's stick with the chronologic order. Let's go with Preflight Panic.
All right. So Preflight Panic. I would love an intro because I know that part of the reason you got into playing this game was because you have an interest in following especially the game development thoughts, I think, if I put that right, of Yahtzee Crawshaw. How did you get into following him, and how did that lead to you playing Preflight Panic?
Ooh, okay. So I've been following different how do I say that? I've been following different bits of content under the Escapist magazine umbrella for I don't know how many years now, but quite a long time. Back when Loading Ready Run was still producing Unskippable, I think it is. Yeah, was rather. They were still Unskippable. Some kind of gaming news show that the name escapes me, and the Gymquisition was still on the Escapist at the time. All the way back then, I don't know if Yahtzee was the one that brought me, to that platform, but at least I have been following Yahtzee, since all of that was still on the Escapist as well. So I've been following, Zero Punctuation, the show that Yahtzee did and still does for the Escapist.
Yeah, a little bit of trivia. It was, I think it was the Yahtzee's year-end review for 2010 was what got me into playing the Just Cause series. True story.
Really?
Yes, it was his recommendation of Just Cause 2 that made me pick up the series.
Oh, yeah.
So, but anyway, please continue.
Oh, I'm very tempted now to give an almost related fun fact that just on the topic of one little thing getting you into a game. On YouTube, there's just a video by the Clip Critics who did like a little jokey song about Fallout 3, and that's what got me to pick up the game. Like if anyone wants to Google and check out that video, you'll know that seriously, this is what got you to drop $60 down on a video game, and yes it did.
It'd be like that sometimes.
It really do. So yeah, I've been following Yahtzee for yeah, for a long ass time, I really want to like try to pin down like just about when that was, but
So I mean, but it's going on for a while, and so I guess if you had asked me, like my knowledge of Yahtzee is mostly just Zero Punctuation, which I watched in the early 2010s, and at some point, probably when I moved on from being a college student, I think I had stopped following him. But I guess what I'm curious about is because I know with Preflight Panic, that's not the only one of these small games that Yahtzee has worked on. It's really sort of an ongoing project of his. Maybe you can move forward to that project and discuss how Preflight Panic exists within that context.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Because Yahtzee has been like experimenting, doing different things outside of Zero Punctuation for a very long time, and well, about a year ago at this point, he started the Dev Diary series on YouTube. That he was going to try to develop small games, but like a full finished product, however small, but still finish it within a month. And yeah, he did 12 games in a year, one game every single month. And yeah, I, as someone who follows Yahtzee pretty closely and someone who is currently studying game development, it was right up my alley. Right up my alley. And I can't remember now. Was Preflight Panic the first game that he did for that series? I want to say yes, it was.
You're gonna know. You're gonna know better than me.
Well, yeah. If I'm wrong, then I'm ready to be ridiculed. That's all. That's all good. But
that's what podcasts are for. Is saying ridiculously incorrect things. And I try to do that at least once a podcast, no matter what podcast it is.
Yeah, absolutely. But yeah, the Preflight Panic, immediately, downloaded it, checked it out, and I was like, let's say the timer is a very integral part to the game. Like, again, it wasn't designed to be speedrun or anything. I mean, most games that are popular in speedrunning aren't. But yeah, it definitely sparked that idea within me that, like, this might just be a good speedrun game, a good speed game.
You might even say it could take off as a speedrun. If folks don't know, now compared to Brütal Legend or even RoboCop, where you can guess the premise of RoboCop, the Preflight Panic game premise is simple. It's a small indie game. You are a steward in a flight cabin, a commercial flight, and you are trying to get everyone situated via the traditional pre-flight setup, which is to say, no chairs back, no tray tables down, no electronic devices, and so you sort of run through that. And if you mess up, as just like in real life, if you mess up, then the plane will crash instead of taking off.
Exactly.
Right, and so with this game, now I've watched a bit of this game. There was actually a really fun clip that I'll link in the pod description where you did a cute little tournament at ESA summer 2019 with some mutual friends, and that was a good little get together. When it comes to speedrunning this game, because as far as I know, there isn't tech, there isn't glitches. It's really just sort of fundamental play. Would you have anything to say about your approach to playing this? Because I imagine it's kind of a flowchart type of thing, or do you view it a different way? I
mean, I do literally have a flowchart.
You do have a flowchart. Okay, that's what I thought. The game. That was my guess, but I didn't know if that was true.
Yeah, no, I literally have a flowchart just to keep next to the game window to tell me exactly what I can expect in every different level. Like, most of it you can kind of remember, but I mean, it is just 20 different instances of the same plane, sometimes a little longer, sometimes a little wider, right? So it is easy to kind of get lost in that. But yeah, it is mostly just about experience and just, training training your eyes to just see specific things that are wrong. It's basically just what do you call those? Where you have, two pictures next to each other and one is just slightly different. One has, like 20 small differences, and just pick out all the differences. it's basically that turned into a video game.
Now, if I remember right, so we spent a little time talking about Yahtzee. I do believe that he noticed you. Is that correct when it comes to the speedrun? He gave you a little shout out?
It's true. The video you just mentioned of our tournament, little snippets of that, and also little snippets of my own live streams, ended up in the Dev Diary series. Yahtzee noticed me. And
now, going forward, do you feel like Preflight Panic's moment has come and gone as a speedrun, or do you have future goals, or has anyone else been working on this as to push it any further?
I don't think. I think it's the big moment for Preflight Panic definitely has come and gone. But I mean, yeah, it's still there. It's still a good game. Yeah, I don't think there's any big glitches or anything that people will probably find. I definitely thought about that a lot when I was creating the rules for the game, because just in the back of my mind, I thought, what if someone does, let's say someone finds some kind of glitch where they do the first 2 levels and then somehow level 15 unlocks. Like, let's say that that's somehow a possibility. Like, how do I formulate the rules to say that, the final level has to be completed, but they also have to start from a clean save, right? Because you could just, play the whole game through, start your timer, and say, all right, well, level 20 is unlocked. I can play that now.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
So that was definitely also a thing that was a bit of a what do you call it? Well, a bit of a challenge for me trying to formulate the rules for the game. But yeah, coming back to the central question, it's just, yeah, I still think it's a good game, but yeah, I'm not actively promoting it, or what was the word? Well, yeah, actively trying to convert people to Preflight Panic anymore.
Preach the good news about Preflight Panic.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I did that for a good long while. I was, a big part of why I set up the tourney, to just try and get more people.
No, I think that's definitely, this is one of those things I think ESA in particular as an event is really good at, is coming up with activities that are short and small in scope that people can just dive into. I mean, I feel like you could mention Preflight Panic in the same breath as Street Boys or the Super Mario 64 relay, or things like that, right? I think it's just something that's by all means, I think any live speedrun event should consider, but like I think the real pioneer is ESA. So shout outs to that event. Believe me, there's another universe where at the end of this month I'm getting ready to travel to Sweden, but we don't live in that universe. Yeah. So rest in peace. Oh man,
very sad.
Yeah, very sad indeed. No, it was the last interview I did where I interviewed Soph. Some of her runs had like people in chat on screen being like, "Oh, I can't wait to go to ESA summer 2020," and I was like, "Oh no!" So what are you gonna do? But
yeah,
speaking of events that did happen, that gets me to segue over to the final game that we're going to discuss in depth, which is a RoboCop of the year 2003. Now, there's a lot of legendarily bad RoboCop video games. The Cusa Grande account, which of course is really more, I feel like, 80s, 90s games, talks about RoboCop games all the time. But in this situation, we're talking about the 2003 RoboCop. Now, this is particularly a game that I think you had started running sort of under the auspices of the Fast Bad Society. Can you talk about, were you the person who found this game and brought it to the group's attention, or what does that story go like? How do you discover RoboCop?
Yeah, I believe I was the one that stumbled upon it, because as a group, I believe KZ has said before that he searches Moby Games for any gems, and I was just searching different libraries of abandonware games, right? Because that's definitely where a lot of diamonds can be found, apparently. And I stumbled upon RoboCop, which I personally had never really come into contact with. I was just like, big name, multiple movies, big licensed property. So let's check it out, right? It looks like just a pretty straight up shooter from the screenshots that were with the game's page. So yeah, I think in that day, searching for things, I probably downloaded 10 different games. But yeah, apparently RoboCop was it ended up actually being a pretty good speed game, in my opinion.
Now, because you mentioned before, at the time that you started running it, you really didn't know anything about RoboCop. You had famously not seen a RoboCop movie, which is not something that's true anymore, correct?
That is very true. Yeah, a lot of people. I don't know if I want to use the word pestered, but we're definitely very adamant about the fact that I should watch the damn film. Like, how can you speedrun a RoboCop video game without ever having seen the film? And I eventually, I think it was within the Obscure Speed Games or Speedruns Club, the Obscure Speedruns Club. I submitted it as a game, for a certain month. For some month, and I threw it up as, if someone beats my time, if someone, knocks me down a peg on that speedrun leaderboard, I will go and watch that film. And that happened.
It did happen. You had good competition from Framerate. That nothing pushes down the time on a game, or really pushes people to optimize quite like a little old fashioned competition. I think that's always been true for me, and it's satisfying because I think you really it makes you ask questions. I think sometimes without that pressure to sort of innovate or squeeze every last drop from something, you wouldn't necessarily always go that far on your own. And it seemed like you had a fun competition, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, on some level, it's just very, very validating, because for some amount of time, it's just me against a piece of software that, it doesn't get offended when I beat it. when I beat it. But another human being, then it gets a bit more interesting. They beat your time. They might flex on you. They might be very respectful about it, but still, there's competition. There's another human being involved, and that does just make it a lot more interesting.
All right, let's get into some of the tech stuff. There's two things I can think of to talk about when it comes to tech, but first, I want to give you the space or room to say, like, what is your favorite bit of tech or like favorite feature of speedrunning RoboCop 2003?
I mean, can I really say anything other than just the FPS?
Right. Well, the FPS was one of the things that I was going to talk about. So go ahead and tell me about the features of FPS in RoboCop 2003.
Yes, of course we are talking about FPS in the context of frames per second, because there might still be some VOD or recording online somewhere of me playing the game for the first time casually, which oh no, I don't want to recommend people to do that. But yeah, just playing the game casually, because it doesn't natively come with any kind of frame rate limiting, and on modern machines it runs a lot faster than the people of Titus Interactive ever expected. So a very good example of how you will discover that is when you are met with an explosion, and the explosion, it is scripted so that the explosion will stay active, as in it's an active source of damage for a certain amount of time. It's not on the basis of, frames, but it does deliver damage every single frame. So say you were running the game at 1 FPS, you'd probably take damage once, maybe twice. But if you're running the game at, let's say, 1600 FPS, you will take enough damage to die 20 times over.
I mean, you love to see it. It's so funny to me to have that sort of uncontrollable damage ticking just going off. It's so fun. So, and in practice, but my understanding now though is that is it true for the speedrun right now that it is permitted to use a frame limiter to either like limit yourself to 30 or leave it uncapped. Is that correct? That you can toggle frame limiting, or is that not? Or did I misunderstand that?
No, exactly. I mean, just having a frame limiter at all is strongly encouraged. But yeah, the live toggling of a frame limiter, so you can control the maximum frame rate of the game at any given time. Yeah, that is permitted in the speedrun right now. There's not been any. Well, no one's really had a problem with that. If someone wants to, if someone's genuinely interested in running RoboCop outside of that context, you know, without that kind of jokery, then I would love to see or hear from that. But at the current point in time,
it's definitely one of those things where, you know, I moderate a few boards, and sometimes someone comes along and they say, well, what if I did this kind of run? And I'm like, you can do that run, and when you do that run, we'll talk more.
Yeah, exactly.
That's all you can do.
I think that's a thing both of us have seen a few times too many, that there are 15 different boards for all kinds of different speedrun contexts, and they are all completely empty.
It's one of my favorite things to do is to find frightening boards on speedrun.com and send pictures of them to Make. It's very good. I recommend it to anyone else out there. Just add him on Twitter, Makebake. So, the other thing I wanted to get to was that I often talk about in speedruns that in order to find glitches or skips, there must be features to exploit. And I think at first glance, you look at the movement available to you, the player, in RoboCop 2003, and there's no jumping. And so you're thinking like, oh, this is going to be hard to find skips. But as it turns out, even though you can't gain height through jumping, it seems like the level design and the slopes in the level design afford you quite a few interesting opportunities for doing skips, and also at least one time that I can think of going out of bounds. Now, I know you had some help with that. I think an excellent member of the Fastpad Society, Kabali, was involved in finding some of that stuff. Did you want to highlight any of those particular skips or sort of how they were discovered?
I mean, yeah, no, you already hit the nail on the head. It was Kabali who found most of the real tricks, because as you can still see on YouTube and Twitch today, that when I brought this game to ESA, to Summer 19, was it?
It was Winter 20.
Was it Winter 20? Was
yeah.
It was that recent. Good Lord.
The last live event.
Oh, God. Yeah, exactly. Like, you can see there that the run was still very, very tame, let's say that. And as soon as Kabali got his hands on it, he tore it right open. I think the first thing that he really came forward with was the cathedral skip, which was there's a very, very lengthy process to opening a certain trapdoor in the ground. It's just a lot of walking back and forth, and it was a thorn in anyone's eye that was really thinking about that speedrun, as in, like, okay, what do we do in the speedrun, right? Because it was a whole level of just walking back and forth. And he ended up finding a way to just shimmy around a bit of rubble and just basically drop yourself down somewhere and skip a very significant part of, not necessarily maybe the whole level, but definitely that stage. Like, you could just wipe a whole minute right off your run, which, yeah, was great. And, that really started the whole search of, like, okay, so there is some level of going out of bounds, or at least going where the developers didn't expect you to go. And that also immediately opened up, like, okay, so it's clear that the collision physics of, you know, when I try to walk past certain objects, there are very clear differences between what will happen when I run the game at 30 FPS or ludicrous FPS. So that, Kabali definitely came in and kicked that door wide open.
No, that's awesome. I think that's some of the cathedral skip to me is kind of like the the best looking thing in the run in terms of dropping down out of bounds just to skip a whole section. One other thing I wanted to ask you about, just sort of to maybe make clear to a listener how this run ends, and just so I understand correctly. Now, the very last thing you do in the run is defuse a bomb, and it seems like there is some amount of randomness involved in this bomb defusal. It's just a pretty wild thing to have happen at the end of the run. Can you describe that for me?
I mean, if you'll allow me, I would even take a small step back. That before the bomb is activated, there's a big boss fight there with a big robotic snake thing that is also, it also comes with a very strong degree of randomness, and that has also become a big source of frustration for both me and Frame Array. And yeah, exactly. If you finish the fight with this robot snake thing, you have to defuse a bomb by typing codes into a number of different consoles, 6 different consoles, and the codes, you know, in terms of gameplay, it's literally just picking option 1 through 6, right? But every single machine needs a specific code typed into it. Okay, not too complicated. So you just go down the list and try all of them. But if you type in a wrong code 3 times, regardless of like what machine you type it into, every single machine is, let's say, reactivated, as in it is no longer diffused. So yeah, you just have to type in random codes. There is one of the machines will always have the same number to it, so that's nice, that's lovely.
That's a freebie.
But
yeah.
The rest, exactly, that's a freebie. So that one we leave for the last one, just to make it a little bit easier on us. But yeah, beyond that, it is completely random, and you could be on incredible pace and then just end up typing the wrong code 7 times, and it all just melts away before your eyes.
Wonderful. Truly wonderful. You love to see it at the end the end of a speedrun.
At the absolute
yeah.
end. Literally, when the bomb is diffused and the little bit of text pops on your screen that says bomb diffused, it fades out to black, and that's the end of the run. It's literally the final seconds that we're talking about here.
All right, so let's start winding down things here a little bit. One of the things I'd like to do with this interview series is to get some connective tissue to sort of do a question relay from guest to guest. Now, I think I already mentioned that my previous guest was Soph, who gave me this question for my next guest, that's you. You're the current one. What is your favorite video game soundtrack?
It's just I'm a real I'm a real broken record.
Yeah,
here,
I know.
Aren't I? Brütal Legend.
Brütal Legend. Yeah, that's what I thought.
the single best. From what I remember, the game itself has 108 licensed songs in its soundtrack, and there's a just a handful of stinkers, let's say, but it's an incredible list of just rock and metal classics that are just simply incredible, and they make the game, as in, yeah, I don't want to get too far away from the question, but exactly, like, the world of the game is built after the songs that it features.
Yeah,
so it's just,
music is essential to the identity of Brütal Legend, and it makes sense to have that soundtrack. But
exactly.
But that does mean that I then do need a question from you for the next guest, and this question can be anything. I don't know. Well, I don't know who the next guest is. You don't either. So knowing that, what's your question? It could be speedrunning related. It could be generally gaming related. You know that they're a speedrunner, most likely, if they're going to be on the speedrunning interview podcast. Could be silly, serious. Past questions have been, if you could mix 2 video game consoles into one, what would it be? If you could do a crossover between this series and another series, what would it be? Do you have a question that I can give to the next guest on OverBoost?
I thought I was kind of original, but now when you said that, it sounds like I'm just ripping off someone else's question. But let's just go with it anyway. If you could combine two different gaming genres, and preferably two that are completely way different, you could combine two different gaming genres in a single game, what would that be? What would that combination be?
Excellent. It is recorded. It will be asked. Whenever the next OverBoost comes out, there'll be some sucker answering that. So let's look forward a little bit. Do you have any future games coming up that you are really excited to play? And I mean that generally. I mean, certainly if you have a game that you think might be speedrun material, talk about that. But just generally speaking, what do you look forward to right now in the world of video games?
I mean, yeah, in the world of video games generally, I am really, really stoked for Cyberpunk 2077.
That is a popular one. I'm curious to see what that'll be like. You know, I feel like the thing I'm really interested in is just to see how the action plays out, because I feel like to me it's that same moment that like when Bethesda did Fallout 3. You know, like they have a gun now. What's that going to be like? And I feel like I'm at that same moment of CD Projekt Red, where previously they, you know, so well known for the Witcher games. And now there are guns. What's that going to be like?
Oh god, yeah. I don't think I have any strong ties to like the whole like cyberpunk. Is it a genre or more like that kind of world? I don't really have any experience with that, but I mean, just hearing from other people that like are excited about this game and watching the trailers and everything, I just think it's going to be a great experience. So yeah, I'm really, really looking forward to it.
Awesome. Do you think you'll try to speedrun it? It's hard to say, right? You don't know what the game's going to be like.
It's always really hard to say with modern video games. I mean, for me, like in recent memory, like I very strongly remember people talking about Red Dead Redemption 2 as something they were possibly going to speedrun, and that game is not speedrun friendly.
Yeah, I gotta say right now, I'm almost close to finishing a casual play of that game myself, and I think right now, more than anything else, I feel like with some of these big development studios, you can kind of guess what's going to be speedrun friendly and isn't, and I feel like firmly right now, Rockstar Games may be still fun to play, but I think their time as a developer who makes speedrun games has come and gone. It does not exist anymore. Now, of course, Bethesda, their games are going to break in half instantly, so that's fine.
Yeah, as long as they don't have strong online components.
Oh yeah, that's true. That's always a spicy way to do things. But all right, so we're winding down to the end here. What should people look for from you? Where should they find you? And is there any particular games or projects that you're working on that you want to pitch to people?
Ooh, well, my main thing in terms of being a person on the internet will always be Twitch. That's definitely still my main thing of stuff that I'm doing, and yeah, I don't know. It's I don't have any very, very strong things, because I feel like I'm about to switch to a different game, and I'm not completely convinced about what that's going to be yet. So yeah, if you want a variety speedrunner, then I guess I'm your guy.
Sure, yeah, and of course, I'll be linking probably your Twitch and Twitter in the podcast description, so definitely look at those, follow them, enjoy them. Make, thank you so much for coming on and giving us really, I think, I feel like sometimes people use the term variety derisively when it comes to content stuff, but I really do find this to be a really interesting variety in terms of the content of the speedrun itself. You have Old Broken License game, sort of a more well-funded passion project like Brütal Legend, and then also a small indie game that's just sort of fundamentals game playing with Preflight Panic. Is really just a solid mix, and I think that sort of thing, something like speedrunning, which is so often about just doing the runs. Really, you have to sort of experience it in different forms to really know who you are and what you want to do. And I think that that sort of thing will inform what you do in the future. So thanks again for coming on.
Thank you very much for having me.
But I need one more thing from you. I just need.
Oh God.
So the way we're gonna end things here is that I'm gonna use a catchphrase like, all right, now we need to boost on out of here, and I need you to give me, after I say that, your best like rocket engine, like super booster fast moving noise. Can you do that for me?
Absolutely.
All right. Folks, thanks for listening. Please follow my Twitter if you need to get more OverBoost content. It's also on YouTube in that form as well. Thank you so much. All right, let's boost on out of here.